Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Here we are getting you your weekly dose of major international news with a perspective. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. British Prime Minister David Cameron leads the biggest business delegation to India. Both nations agree to push economic trade relations to new high. Iranian nuclear progress ruffles international feathers. UN watchdog says Iran installing sophisticated devices at uranium enrichment plant. More than 100 people killed in violence in Syria in a week. Russia-Arab League offer to broker negotiations between Assad and rebels to end war. And all the sporting action, Martin Irvine makes Irish history, wins first men's track cycling medal in 116 years. This week, the focus is on the recently concluded visit by the British Prime Minister David Cameron to India. Underscoring India's importance in Britain's evolving foreign policy priorities, David Cameron was in India this week for a second time since assuming office in 2010. Now, though his visit to the Jallianwala Bagh had evoked mixed reactions in India, he became the first serving British Prime Minister to do so, pay his respects at the site, describing the massacre as a deeply shameful event in British history. Economic relations were the focus of this visit. Accompanying the British Prime Minister was a large business delegation from the UK. David Cameron emphasised that both New Delhi and London should remove barriers to cooperation and make it easier to invest in each other. Signalling to Indian investors his government's seriousness about the UK-India special relationship, Cameron has decided to introduce a same-day visa service for Indian businesses waiting to invest in the UK. Now, he also suggested that there is no limit to the number of Indian students who can study at British universities and to the number that could stay on and work as well. Now, we will be discussing this, and this week on the show, I have Mr. Salman Haidar, former Foreign Secretary, joining me for a perspective. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on World Panorama. Before I get to him, let's have a look at this detailed report.
Clearly out to woo Indian businesses and students, British Prime Minister David Cameron on his visit to Mumbai on Monday announced that the UK would introduce same-day visa services for investors and that there would be no cap on the number of Indian students to the UK or the duration of their residence there.
There is no limit to the number of Indian students who can come and study at British universities as long as they have basic English qualification and a place at one of those universities. And there's no limit to the number that can stay and work in graduate employment.
Accompanied by the largest ever trade delegation from the UK to any country, the PM also said India should continue to reduce trade barriers to create better opportunities for British companies and spoke of partnering in Indian infrastructure projects like potential economic corridor between Mumbai and Bangalore.
We've already got the biggest visa operation that the British have anywhere in the world right here in India, but we want to improve it. We already give 9 out of 10 visas that anyone applies to travel to the United Kingdom. But I can announce today that we're going to introduce for businesses a same-day visa service because we want you to come to our country quickly, to invest in our country and to support our country.
The CEO's Forum, co-chaired by Shri Ratan Tata and Peter Sands, met today. And we had very useful discussions. The CEO's Forum have made focused, specific and practical recommendations to enhance the partnership between India and UK.
In the last leg of his visit, David Cameron became the first serving British Prime Minister to voice regret about one of the bloodiest episodes in colonial India, a massacre of unarmed civilians in the city of Amritsar in 1919. Cameron's visit and expression of regret for what happened stopped short of an apology but made it clear he considers the episode a stain on Britain's past.
His visit to the memorial itself is a very big gesture. He came here, bowed down and offered a wreath in memory of the victims. His tribute is significant.
Making his second visit to India as Prime Minister, Cameron's trip comes days after a similar trade mission by French President François Hollande, underlining how Europe's debt-stricken states are competing to tap into one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Cameron's delegation, which included representatives of more than 100 companies, was the biggest taken abroad by a British Prime Minister.
All right, let's talk more about this. Mr. Haidar, first of all, I want to compare this visit of the British Prime Minister with that of François Hollande, who was here. Do you think this is much more broader in terms of the areas that have been touched upon during his visit rather than what we saw at the time of the French president's visit?
Well, the French president was able to concentrate, or felt it necessary to concentrate on at least two big ticket items.
Right.
One is the further work on the MMRCA, and the other is a question of nuclear power.
Yes.
Now, apart from that, there were various other things. Mr. Cameron's visit did not have any such major issues or major items to concentrate on, but it had other dimensions. The relationship between India and Britain is a textured one. There's a great deal to be said. It goes deep into our history, and it has negative and positive elements in it. So a visit at the top level between the two countries always has a certain dimension which has to be taken into account.
Right. Also, sir, India and Britain did forge a sort of a strategic partnership at the time of Tony Blair's visit earlier on, if we look at back in 2005. But there was nothing concrete back then. Do you think that now it's time for, New Delhi and London to move ahead and forge a much more deeper partnership, looking at the economics of it, especially with the kind of interest that, the British Prime Minister has shown in the economics of it all, has really got a lot of it to do with the way things move forward?
I think that is a very important element in it. I would hesitate to give it sort of overweening priority.
Okay.
Britain, as well as other countries of Europe, are today in a deep recession. They are looking for economic opportunities abroad. Friends like India and other major countries are natural emerging partners, I would say established partners, which give the possibility of further development, important further development in the economic relationship. But there are other elements too. And I think that, as we'd have seen in Mr. Cameron's visit, no very big economic decisions were taken.
That's right.
Indications were given of goodwill and a desire to move forward. And doubtless some good things will come out of the fact that so many business people were in contact with each other. But this is not the only focus of the visit. As you mentioned a moment ago, he went to Jallianwala Bagh. Now, his going there had its own significance. It was an attempt to show goodwill, an attempt to acknowledge wrongdoing and to move on to a more equable and friendly relationship.
Indeed, a very courageous thing to have been done there by Mr. Cameron. But also let's not look at the economic aspect of it for a bit as the business partnership between the two nations, but also the fact that UK is one of Europe's biggest arms, it has one of the biggest arms stockpile, and it is kind of looking to dump that somewhere in India. It does consider, India as a huge prospective market. So how much of that, looking at that, do you think that it is the UK that needs India more at this point in time rather than the other way around? Do you think that?
Well, so far as arms are concerned, the sale of arms, certainly not only UK, but all European countries need India more than India needs them, because there are many suppliers, and in this case, India is a very big buyer. The UK, I wouldn't say that they're trying to dump their arms, but they're trying to sell to India the equipment that it needs and that it is in the market looking for. And it was a strong bidder for the MMRCA, which eventually went to France. So rather than to Britain or to the consortium, the European consortium that was trying to sell the Eurofighter to us. So it is in the trade. If one contract, however big and important it may be, is not the whole story. And I would imagine that Britain will remain interested in trying to explore the Indian market and make available its own items which are well proven. They are arms of proven quality, and India will no doubt examine them appropriately.
Right. Also, sir, we know that the UK is a huge economy. India is doing its part. It's number 7 right now as far as, its economy is concerned. It's growing at a very rapid pace. Now, many economists say that the time is not far when India will actually overtake countries like the UK. Now, looking at the relationship now, how much does the dynamics of this evolving relationship change, looking at a time like that when India overtakes the UK, let's say, in becoming a big economy?
Well, it's not a two-horse race between India and the UK. And if we overtake them, well, so what? Does it really make our lives better? I think it's important for us to look to each other in a very positive way. They have many assets, so do we. And I think that to find ways of going ahead together, of doing things which are beneficial to both countries, is really what the challenge is today.
Right. And it does seem that things are definitely moving in the right direction with the, British Prime Minister, with his visit, making all the right noises. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me this week on the show and sharing your perspective with us. On that note, we'll take a very short break. After that, a look at the Oscar Pistorius case and the many twists that it brings with it. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. Russia and the Arab League proposed on Wednesday to broker talks between the Syrian opposition and President Bashar al-Assad's regime to try to resolve the country's civil war, while violence continued unabated in several parts. The 23-month-old conflict in Syria has repeatedly defied international efforts to bring the parties together to end the bloodshed. Now, Wednesday's offer from Moscow, one of Assad's closest allies, suggested the regime could be warming to the idea of a settlement as it struggles to hold territory and claw back ground it has lost.
Violence continues to rock Syria as a series of deadly attacks killed many.
Allahu Akbar, Hamouriye. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. Allahu Akbar, Hamouriye.
Amateur videos posted on a social media website believed to be filmed on February 20th showed the aftermath of a Syrian airstrike in Damascus. On the same day, a soccer player was killed and several injured when 2 shells struck a stadium in Damascus during a training session. Meanwhile, Russia and the Arab League offered to broker talks between the Syrian government and the opposition to end the country's 2-year civil war. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Syria and the Arab League are attempting to establish direct contact between the two sides of the conflict, which the UN says has killed at least 70,000 people. He spoke as he hosted Arab League officials and the foreign ministers of Egypt, Lebanon and other countries in Moscow.
We are working towards the dialogue to start. It is up to the parties themselves to decide on where and on what level it will be. And it is highly advisable for them not to set preconditions like we would talk to this person but not with that one.
This proposal can be termed notable as it emanated from Russia, Assad's chief advocate on the international stage. The timing also might mean the regime is showing a willingness to negotiate.
The White House warned Iran on Thursday that it would face further pressure and isolation if it fails to address international concerns about its nuclear program in talks with world powers next week. Now, this after reports, according to UN nuclear watchdog, that said Iran has begun installing advanced centrifuges at its main uranium enrichment plant.
The White House warned Iran on Thursday that it would face further pressure and isolation if it fails to address international concerns about its nuclear program in talks with world powers next week.
We have been clear that the United States is determined to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. And we have also been clear that we believe there is still time to resolve this issue diplomatically.
In a confidential report, the International Atomic Energy Agency said 180 so-called IR-2M centrifuges and empty centrifuge casings had been hooked up at the plant near central town of Natanz. According to the report, they were not operating yet. If launched successfully, such machines could enable Iran to significantly speed up its accumulation of material that the West fears it could be used to devise a nuclear weapon. Iran says it is refining uranium only for peaceful energy purposes.
Actions taken by Iran that represent a continuation of their refusal to abide by their international obligations are hardly a surprise. They are why Iran is suffering under a sanctions regime that is more strict and more universally applied than any in history.
Benjamin Netanyahu, who has strongly hinted at possible military action if sanctions and diplomacy fail to halt Iran's nuclear drive, told the United Nations in September that Iran must not be allowed to amass enough higher enriched uranium to make even a single warhead. Iran denies Western accusations that it is seeking to develop a capability to make atomic bombs. Tehran says it is Israel's assumed nuclear arsenal that threatens peace.
A high-profile murder case has shone an unflattering light on South Africa's police force, experts said on Wednesday after the lead detective gave contradictory evidence in court and admitted to mistakes at the crime scene. This is the Pistorius case.
The bail hearing of Oscar Pistorius descended into chaos on Thursday after it emerged the lead detective investigating the killing of the Olympian's girlfriend was himself facing attempt to murder charges.
Well, I would agree that they've handled it clumsily. I mean, surely they should have been prepared and aware of the fact that the matter of Botha is going to be reinstated. So I would assume that they would have dealt with it in a more professional manner in at least mentioning that or bringing that up before and, just not dealing with it as a surprise and let everybody make their own assumptions now.
Hilton Botha, who took the stand against Pistorius at the Paralympic and Olympic track stars bail hearing this week, is due to appear in court in May. Meanwhile, Oscar Pistorius' family arrived at the Pretoria Regional Court on Thursday alongside his defense team to present their closing arguments to the judge on the Paralympians' murder bail hearing.
The important issue here is that the state was not relying on just his oral testimony. It's really relying more on the forensics and real hard evidence that came out of the scene.
Oscar Pistorius, a double amputee dubbed Blade Runner because of his carbon fiber racing blades, faces life in prison if convicted of premeditated murder over the shooting of his girlfriend. While the state is seen as having bungled the bail hearing, the police may have handled the investigation better than most murder cases in a country where an average of 42 murders are committed each day.
Time for a short break. After that, a look at all the glitz and glamour. Entertainment updates are up next. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying with us. Now let's quickly get you a wrap of all the other international news in Globe Watch. Responding to a video recently released by a North Korean news agency, which shows flames superimposed over a video of US soldiers and President Barack Obama, White House spokesman Jay Carney said that the US was more concerned about North Korea's actions than propaganda. The ratcheting up of rhetoric follows a North Korean nuclear test last week in defiance of UN resolutions. Pyongyang said the aim of the test was to bolster its defenses given the hostility of the United States, which has led a push to impose sanctions on North Korea. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev met Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff on Wednesday during his visit to the South American country. His visit, aimed at sealing defense and nuclear technology, deals with a fellow member of the BRIC nations. Sale of Russian anti-aircraft missile systems to Brazil was also on the meet agenda. Brazil is beefing up its air defenses ahead of the World Cup soccer tournament next year and the 2016 Olympic Games to ward off the threat of a terrorist attack during the global sporting events. In the wake of nationwide protests against high electricity prices, Bulgarian Prime Minister Baiko Borisov resigned from his position on Wednesday. Earlier, the Prime Minister had proposed an 8% slash in power prices and even sacked the country's finance minister in a bid to calm protests. But calls for his resignation grew louder and massive protests continued across the country for several days. Thousands of people observed a massive strike in Greece and marched towards the parliament in a nationwide anti-austerity strike that brought the country to a standstill. The strike disrupted transport, public schools, civil service offices and left hospitals working with emergency staff in the first general strike of the year. The Vatican has said Pope Benedict may change church rules governing the conclave, the event where cardinals from around the world will meet next month to secretly elect his successor. The Benedict was studying the possibility of making changes to 2 laws established by his predecessor, Pope John Paul, before he abdicates on the 28th of this month. The changes may affect the timing of the start of the conclave. Time now for all the sports news from through the week. Here's sports action.
Dove Mountain looked more like a winter wonderland than a golfing venue after driving snow forced play to be abandoned in the opening round of the WGC Accenture Match Play Championship on February 20th. Almost 2 inches of snow covered the entire course, driving range and practice, putting green at Dove Mountain's Ritz-Carlton Golf Club after all but 10 matches had started, with none finishing. It is the third PGA Tour event this year to be severely affected by adverse weather. The World Track Cycling Championship began in Minsk with 4 gold medals on offer. Frenchman Francois Purvis finally won the gold medal in the men's 1 kilometer time trial. USA's Sarah Hammer crushed Australia's Amy Cure in the final of the women's individual pursuit by more than 8 seconds, coming home in 3 minutes 32 seconds, with another Australian Annette Edmondson taking the bronze. Germany won the women's team sprint title by edging out China in the final by just 0.03 of a second. The International Olympic Committee finished its 4th round of inspections of the Rio 2016 Olympic sites on Wednesday. This was the IOC's first visit to Rio since telling officials in November that time was ticking and preparations needed to speed up. But on Wednesday, both the IOC and Brazilian officials appeared confident that all the Olympic venues will be ready on time. The IOC's next visit to the 2016 Olympic sites will be in June.
Let's now get you up to speed with what's been happening in the glamour world. From the new releases this week to what's new in fashion, here's our entertainment wrap.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and South Korean movie director Kim Ji-woon teamed up on Wednesday to promote their movie The Last Stand in Seoul. Action film The Last Stand marks the comeback of actor-turned-politician Schwarzenegger, who returns to the screen after a 10-year break. In this film, he plays a retired Los Angeles policeman forced to protect a tiny border town from a notorious drug kingpin. The Last Stand also marks the debut of South Korean director Kim Ji-woon in Hollywood. Released in the United States on 18 January, the film hit the South Korean theatres on Thursday. Stars gathered to see the glittering jewels of late actress Elizabeth Taylor, which were on display at Bulgari's boutique in Beverly Hills on Tuesday. The exhibition included marvelous pieces from Taylor's collection, including those she wore during the filming of Cleopatra. Widely reported to have been bought from the Taylor estate by Bulgari at the December 2011 auction of her collection at Christie's, the jewels were on display this week ahead of next Sunday's Academy Awards. Noting Taylor's grounded nature in contrast to her impossibly glamorous life, Bulgari is known for creating jewels that pair precious stones with items of no intrinsic value such as antique coins, ceramics and silk cords. Britain's pregnant Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton, undertook her first public solo engagement on Tuesday since December last year. Wearing a grey wrap dress, she visited the Hope House, a treatment centre for women who are recovering from alcohol and drug addiction. The mother-to-be, who has just returned from a holiday in Mustic, looked happy and healthy as she interacted with women at the addiction treatment centre. All eyes were set on Kate as she appeared to show a slightly fuller figure. 31-year-old Kate is due to give birth to her first child in July this year.
That's all we have for you in this edition of World's Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with more world news. Till then, you can join us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. This week, we wrap up giving you a great tip. Venezuelans in Caracas are using laughter yoga therapy to combat the stress of life. Laughter yoga was created by Indian physician Dr. Madan Kataria back in '95 and combines sustained laughter with elements of yogic breathing. Goodbye and thanks for watching.